Welcome to Code Geeks Lab. In this video, we will be looking at some of the important interview JavaScript questions. So let's begin. What are the primitive values in JavaScript? A primitive value or a data type is data that is not an object and has no methods. So all the types except objects define immutable values. And as we know in Java, strings are immutable. So in JavaScript, we have the following primitive types: string, number, null, undefined, boolean, symbol, and begin. So what are falsy values in JavaScript? So if we take a double not operator of a value, or we pass the value in the boolean function, and if it returns false, then this becomes a falsy value. So in this case, as we can see, null and undefined are falsy values. In certain cases, null is not as primitive as it seems, because every object is derived from null values. So if we compare null value with an object type, then it returns true. Coercion. What is the difference between implicit and explicit coercion? So type coercion is the process of converting value from one type to another. So let's suppose we have a string and we want to convert it to a number, then this is known as type coercion. So all the types, whether it is a primitive or an object, are valid for type coercion. So in the implicit coercion, we can see in the first example, number 2 is converted to a string and this returns 28. In the second example, boolean is converted to a number, false is converted to 0, and true is converted to 1. So it returns 1. So in the third example, string 2 is converted to number 2 and it returns 12. Hence, implicit coercion is a way of converting values to another type without the programmer doing it. If we take a look at the explicit example, the function % has a string 6. So this will convert string 6 to a number 6 and this will return number 7. So explicit coercion is the way of converting values to another type where programmers explicitly do it. Difference between null and undefined keywords. So when you define a variable and not assign a value to it, then it automatically puts a placeholder, which is called undefined. So if we take a look here, variable a is declared but not assigned any value. So JavaScript automatically puts a placeholder to that variable that is undefined. So if we talk about null, it means an empty and non-existing value. So as we can see, variable b is initialized with a null value. So null is basically assigned and explicitly means nothing. While undefined typically means a variable has been declared but not defined yet. Null and undefined are both primitives and falsy values, which we discussed previously. So we have already discussed that null is also an object. Take a look at the type of null and undefined using type of operator. So undefined will return undefined type, whereas null will return object type. So now we will move on to problems on hoisting. So we are given this program and we have to predict the output. So the output will be undefined. So let's take a look at the solution. So in the left, we have defined this program and we have initialized a variable result equal to 7, but we are trying to print that variable before assigning it. So in JavaScript, a variable can be declared after it has been used. This is because variable declaration using var are hoisted to the top of the functional scope at the compile time. So what will happen at the compile time in this function, all the variables defined will be hoisted to the top of the functional scope. So we can see that var result is placed at the top. So when we try to print this result, this has been declared but not assigned any value. So as we know previously that in such a case we will get undefined. So the next problem, we have to predict the output for this. So let's take a look at the solution. So we can see that we have initialized a variable initial with a string welcome 2020, and inside the display function we are trying to print initial, and again we have declared a variable initial where we are initializing with a string by 2020. So we can use the same property of hoisting as we have learned in the previous question. So this variable initial will be moved to the first line because at the compile time all the variables in a function will be hoisted at the top. So as we can see, this variable is declared but not initialized with any of the value. So if we try to print it, then it will return undefined.